where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
March Madness time. I know this isn't a sports podcast, but we're gonna tie into it somehow.
Sorry, that's football.
That's football. Yeah, that's for our draft season when we decide to do drafts again.
I don't know. I don't watch a lot of basketball, so I don't really know what the sound is for CBS Sports.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the sound that they make, but I can tell you the sound I make after I lose all of my bets on these games that I don't watch but still bet on. But
yeah, I have to stay away from betting for a little while. I got a little crazy. Haven't lost anything, but like major like that. But like, yeah, it's like I gotta take a breather.
Yeah, once you get on a cold streak, it's best to just walk away for a little bit.
Do my my free brackets and
call it a day.
Oh,
well, let's jump in, because what we're gonna do, we are gonna jump into a March Madness style bracket of our own. Now, what we did was I compiled a handful of our quote unquote favorite houses from the last 4 years. So I took 4, what I would say would probably be our top 4 houses from the past 4 years. And these are going to all be originals. I left the IPs out of it just because it made it a little bit easier for me to select without telling either of you which ones I picked. And I kind of randomly seeded them as what I thought would be fairly appropriate. But I haven't looked at the matchups yet. So I'm really interested to get in on this. Now, we probably won't spend a crazy amount of time on these, but we're going to do a little bracket to see which one wins. So like I said, it's the top 4 original houses from the past 4 years. This is all events that we've been going to more regularly than the previous ones, like 25 and stuff like that, where I think we have a better grasp on these houses versus just some other random previous houses in the past. So luckily enough for us, there's 3 of us on here, so we won't have to deal with tiebreakers. But that's what we got going on today. And then before we got into that, I did want to say congratulations to Jamie. She hit her 1-year anniversary. She has dealt with me and Seamus for a whole year and hasn't quit yet.
Time flies.
Wow,
it's crazy. I know.
Weird.
Fun,
it's
right?
crazy.
Little golf clap. No, it's been so much fun. To think I was so nervous to start doing this, and now I love it.
And you're like, people don't know who we are. People don't listen to you guys.
I still can't believe it. Honestly, it's so fun. No, it's so great. I didn't want to hype us up too much and then be disappointed, but you guys really do listen. It's awesome.
But yeah, I wanted to make mention of that. So I'm going to get into my beer real quick. I picked this up, of course, at the typical spot, half barrel. But this is called Small Vices. It looks like it's from the Zool Beer Company. X, the U with 2 dots above the U and an L. I think that's Zool. But it's a microbrew from Knoxville, Tennessee. This is a New England hazy. It's about a 5.5% ABV. And it's just very citra based, it says. So I'm going to dive in on this. The can art is really, really cool. I can't even really describe it. That doctor looks like the doctor from Nightmare Before Christmas. There's a little zombie guy on an electric chair. There's a weird plant Cthulhu style thing, but I'll show it off in here. You probably can't see. The camera's too bright. Either way, it looks pretty rad. But I'm going to tap into that. Is anybody else got anything? I know what Jamie has, and I just want to make her say it on air so we can shame her.
I do have something. Actually, it's established in 1885. Authentic blend of 23 flavors.
23 flavors.
Ooh.
It's crazy.
A crisp classic Dr. Pepper. But although I'm drinking Dr. Pepper tonight, I did stop by like Nick, one of our favorite spots, Half Barrel, the other day after work, and I did pick up a few different beers and a interesting seltzer that I was very intrigued by that is 15% ABV that I'll probably be trying within the next couple episodes that we do some of the different stuff that I got.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one right there.
Weird, yeah.
Sure.
It's like, how is that legal?
Yeah. But this thing smells very, very hoppy just off the nose, and let's see what it tastes like. It doesn't taste hoppy at all. This is weird. It tastes
tricked you.
Wow. It's super light. It doesn't feel like any hazy at all. It's super neutral, which is really bizarre because I was expecting to kind of get punched in the mouth with all these hops because it was stating how citra hoppy it was, but it's really not hoppy. That's sort of false advertising. Interesting. Yeah,
I feel like you've been
know.
on a hazy kick lately.
I did. I picked up a lot of the hazy IPA. So I don't know. I don't dislike it. I just not what I was expecting at all. But either way, let's get into the brackets because this is going to feel like a September, October mid-season episode for us because me and Seamus have stuff to attend to. We're going to go see The Matrix. So we need to blast through this bracket real quick.
Making me record on my Buster's night again.
That's okay. Let's get into this. We have their first matchup, number 1 seed, Dead Man's Pier, going up against the number 16 seed, Depths of Fear.
Ooh.
Interesting one. Depths of Fear, when I was looking at this bracket, was probably the one that I kind of least remember out of all of the other ones we've put on here. Even from that same year, I remember other houses better. I remember enjoying Depths of Fear, and I liked it enough to put it in the top 4. I think it was probably the number 4, and that's why it's kind of sitting at the 16 seed. But obviously, we know the love I have for Dead Man's Pier. This is just, it hits home for me. It's just everything I could have asked for and more. Jamie, do you have like a different remembering of Depths of Fear at all? Do you enjoy this more? I remember liking it, and like there's some really good parts, but I mean, obviously it's going against Dead Man's. There's no way I'm going to let that thing win.
I feel like this was before all of us kind of went together like super often, so I don't think that either of us really did many runs on this house. Maybe that's why we don't remember it as much, because I didn't remember too much of it as well. But what I do remember, unfortunately, was the awful smell that was in it. I'm really sensitive to smells, and I know the smell was just not very good in the first walkthrough of the house. But I also remember everyone getting all hyped up over like the fake dog that they had that was like killed in the house by one of the little creatures. So I remember that, and I remember the weird like mutant fish creature thing. So I kind of have a gist of it, but as a full walkthrough, I'd probably have to watch a video on YouTube because I can't really remember that well of it either.
Yeah, and we got some of those characters in Hellblock, right? The Brooders.
Yes,
I think they were called, and they weren't in Scary, were they as well?
I feel like they were in a scare zone for some reason. Was it in? Did they have an appearance in Shipyard? I don't think that. Maybe they did.
I think they had a Brooder in there as well.
I think they might have.
It might be a similar character, but either way, no. I remember enjoying the house. I remember it was really tight, claustrophobic. I think that was the one with like the super stroby scene in the subway station. I don't know.
Subway station.
Like on the subway, or maybe I'm thinking of something from 26 or.
Was that Descendants?
Whatever. No. I know there's one in there, but I was picturing something else. But Seamus, what do you remember much of Depths of Fear? Because that was your first year.
It was the first year I went. Yeah, it was 2019, right?
Yep.
I remember enjoying it. I remember thinking it was relatively unique compared to. I mean, obviously, I hadn't really been going to any real haunt like that on that level. I mean, every haunt I had been to before was like, small town, nothing major. Like Spooky World was the craziest haunt I'd been to. Well, the other one would have been Witch's Woods up in Mass. But yeah, I remember it being unique, different. I do remember it didn't feel as put together, I guess. It did feel like there wasn't enough going on in it. I feel like it was really kind of like samey from room to room.
Yeah.
But overall, the theming was something you don't see too often. So I like when they kind of explore under the water or underwater type situations. And
Me too.
I did like the characters in this one too, the brooders or whatever you called them.
Yeah. But all right, let's just get down to voting because I think we've said our piece, but I think we all know where we're going to go. Seamus, Dead Man's Pier, the 1 seed over Depths of Fear. Which one's taking the victory in this one?
This one's easy. It's Dead Man's. And I think it's actually a closer matchup than people would give it credit for. Obviously, it's the biggest seed gap, but I think Dead Man's is going to win relatively quickly, easily.
Yeah. We know what my vote is. Jamie, would you have picked Depths of Fear, or is this a clean sweep?
I think this was a clean sweep. I was also going to pick Dead Man's.
All right, yeah. So Dead Man's is going over. And that's kind of the reason why I picked, not to go backwards, but that's kind of why I picked the top 4 from the previous 4 events, because we didn't need to go 30 minutes talking about how Dead Man's Pier and against Chucky. We just don't need to do those comparisons. It's just a waste of everybody's time. All right, so let's move back into these things. So now we have our 9 seed Descendants of Destruction going against our 8 seed Yeti Campground Kills. This one's interesting. This is a tough little matchup. So let's see. Seamus, why don't you give your little opening spiel on these and kind of pitch it, and then we'll do this. We'll bounce back and forth. We'll pitch these matchups a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a close matchup, hence the seeds. Descendants of Destruction was from 2021, right? Or is it 22?
Yeah, that was 31. My years are so shit now.
Yeah, they're running together.
Yeah, that was 31 because it wasn't last year. It was the year before.
This was about, kind of like the end of the world. Everybody kind of moved underground, and the further underground they moved, they became more and more feral and be kind of morphed and evolved into, monstrous entities, and eventually became almost more like plant-like or fungus-like than human. And then, of course, there's Yeti Campground Kills from last season, which is the second full house with Yeti
of the yeah.
Obviously the third iteration of the Yeti character. And this one obviously took place in a campground. It's very campy, no pun intended. A lot of goofy and funny scares, but at the same time still pretty intense. That took place in some sort of 50s era campground. So I think they're pretty close as far as theming. I guess maybe not close in theming, but the same type of monsters. It isn't anything really based in any reality. They're actually monsters of some kind.
Yeah,
it just comes down. I think at this point, is what it's going to come down to is whether or not you think, you liked one or the other. Obviously, so yeah. I don't really know what else to say other than
that was great.
It's going to come down to pick 'em.
This is tough.
Sorry.
This is a tougher matchup, and I'm glad I didn't really look at these brackets. I punched the seeds in and let it kind of do its thing. But these are two that I wouldn't really pair together. And I remember Yeti. It's gonna sound weird, but Yeti didn't disappoint me. But because of the character and because of the setting, my hopes were just so high that it was a little bit tougher to hit that. I still love the house. But whereas Descendants was that slow burn for me, I just, maybe I didn't appreciate it enough, but I felt like its stock rose so much over the course of the year, and it ended up being one of our favorites. Now, I think the drawback with that one is we really started to appreciate Descendants after our Unmasking the Horror tour, where we got to pick up on these little nuances of the story that otherwise we wouldn't have figured out just by going through the house. But after doing that, for me, actually, personally, just on my level, appreciated it and really enjoyed that house a lot more. So this is a really tough one because they're two completely, like Seamus said, they're both in that monster-y world, but they're we have underground city versus 50s campground. this is tough. So Jamie, why don't you? I mean, what do you think on these, and then we can kind of go around the horn and grab some winners.
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I was literally going to say that I feel like we didn't gain more of appreciation for it until after we did our tour, which was awesome because I know we all like seeing all those little details and fun stories that you wouldn't learn otherwise from our tour guides and everything. But it's tough because like you said too, I just feel like I would never put these together just because they're so different, but I feel like that's what makes it kind of good too. And I feel like the only thing that's kind of deterring me away from one or the other is I feel like I kind of maybe outran this house too much, that I kind of feel like it was a necessity on the slower nights when we would go, we would still do this house. And I feel like we did it too much to the point where maybe I got a little tired of it. But yeah.
All right. So then what is your pick? Let's go right to picks. What do you take on the 9 seed Descendants or Yeti Campground Kills at our 8 seed?
I am taking Yeti Campground Kills.
Ooh, all right. So I'm going to take the pressure off myself and I'm going to let Seamus go. So I don't have to be the one that makes the deciding factor here.
So
or maybe I will. Maybe I'll have to split the time.
Well, I mean, you may have just screwed yourself because I'm actually going to Descendants here.
Oh, come on.
Oh,
it's my
you
worst
played
nightmare.
Yourself.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I really think that, I mean, it's close, but
man.
I appreciate all the work that went into Descendants. I appreciate what they were able to pull off in a sprung tent. The facade was phenomenal. The characters, I liked the way they kind of morphed and changed as you went through it, and the scenes were different and unique, and there was a lot of different things going on. Not to say that Yeti didn't have interesting things happening in it, but I just felt like Descendants was, you take a tired trope like the end of the world and actually try to do something a little different with it. But I mean, really, it's that the whole scene of going in the subway is really what sold that house for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Maybe it's recency bias. And that's going to push me in the opposite way. I'm going to go Descendants as well. I loved Yeti. I do, but
the biggest Yeti fan, and he picks Descendants. That's crazy.
And Campground fan too. But maybe because, like you said, we ran it a bunch. Descendants.
And I was talking about Descendants. I feel like we ran it a bunch.
Well,
we
Yeti,
also
we
did
ran
Yeti.
all the time.
We did Yeti a bunch too, but I think you guys definitely did it more than I did.
But Descendants, like the fact that a house can grow on me that much over a season instead of either staying stagnant or going stale is an impressive feat. Like Seamus said, the set design, the fact that they put a fucking subway in a sprung tent and use those mirror tricks. And what kind of really did it for me too was one of my final thoughts was the fact that when you hold Descendants up to something like The Last of Us, very similar concepts, but what Universal was able to do with the original was just head and shoulders above Last of Us. So they took like a fairly like concept that's been fairly done before and really improved it and just kind of gave us this crazy thing. So our first upset is on the board, the 9 seed over the 8 seed, which is kind of interesting. All right, so let's go to our next matchup. It is our 5-seeded Puppet Theater versus our 12 seed. We're talking Yeti again. Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. So Jamie, why don't you run through those for us a little bit, and then we'll kind of toss it around the horn and grab some votes.
So, Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. Oh man, I should have done some homework on this. I
should have
Yeti.
too. I didn't do any research. So
that makes me.
We don't do research on this podcast. We do not do.
We're
research.
just winging it. We definitely do not script it out. Clearly, I'll probably go with Puppet Theater first because I feel like I know that one a little bit better.
So you're just voting? You're not even going into the.
No, I'm starting with Puppet Theater to start off.
Okay. I thought you just said, I'm just going to vote for Puppet Theater.
No.
It's like, what the fuck is this?
Puppet Theater, I feel like even though it was such a couple years ago at this point, which is crazy, I feel like was a house that really stuck with me. I feel like it was so beautifully executed. It was so creative. We've seen doll houses in the past when we've had Dead Silence. We've had Dollhouse of the Damned. Also 2 houses I really enjoyed. I feel like creepy dolls will always be a thing, and it doesn't have to be Chucky, it doesn't have to be Megan, all that kind of stuff like that. It could just be ventriloquist dummies, which I feel like are even more frightening, puppet master, stuff like that. The ambiance in this house, I feel like same thing kind of Seamus said with the sprung tents, how they did with the Descendants. It was just so amazing what they were able to execute with literally just immersing yourself and making it feel like you're in an old rundown abandoned theater. The different characters that they had were so detailed. The different little puppet masters that they had going around and stuff like that, the different little Easter eggs that were in the house that we also found out after doing the unmasking tour, which also elevated my likeness for that house too. Kind of the same thing with Descendants of Destruction as well. But then you have the classic Yeti. This one was Terror of the Yukon, right?
Correct.
So one thing I do always enjoy with houses, and I know you guys too, is the temperature effect that they do with this. And I feel like that was obviously not the first time we've seen that temperature play in houses before, but I feel like this was the one I distinctly remember more, I should say, just because of the setting that they had it in, the icy walkway you would go through. It was windy. It had the, how do I explain it? The actual fur white Yetis, like you would expect, like a Yukon Yeti, like Mount Everest, kind of stuff like that. But
Like
this
Animal
one-
Kingdom Yeti.
like Animal Kingdom Yeti. But this one was tough because I'm trying to think, wasn't this the house that had the creature cameo in it? I'm pretty sure when you were walking kind of through the underwater depths aspect out of the icy winter frost, because I remember it didn't really make sense to me that he was in there, but I distinctly remember him popping out from like a piece of like big coral kind of thing that they had hanging in the house. I could be making this shit up for all I know, but I really think this happened. And
Could
it's really,
be, but I don't remember that. That might be in the Monster House. I think you're thinking of Monsters.
maybe I'm thinking of monsters, but I swear to God, maybe it wasn't Creature per se, but maybe it was like a character that they made look like Creature, possibly. I don't
I
know.
think
I'm
it
gonna
was
look
just
it up after
Yetis.
the episode because
I
this
think
is
there was
gonna
Yetis.
this is gonna kill me on the inside. I sound like an idiot. No, but obviously it's pretty tough for me to try to hype up Yeti because I don't remember it that much because I have a terrible memory. So, what are you guys thinking like this? Did I sell either of them at all? I mean, Puppet Theater, I think I
Yeah,
did.
you sold the Gillman and Yeti for me. That's number one right there.
Puppet Theater, I think I did pretty well. So,
Yeah, I mean, again, like we just coming off talking about Descendants, Puppet Theater, another one that just like, how did they make this happen in a sprung tent? You know, that big opera scene where we're walking through the actual theater and the seats are next to us and they have the big rounded theater ceiling.
mhm.
And they had an actual balcony like seat up there is just maddening. And the way that they played with, you know, the forced perspective of going down underneath into whatever they call that, is it called the penguin box or something like that? But that's where all the instruments and stuff are underneath where the orchestra is.
The pit.
The pit, yeah. I thought the penguin box or whatever. Yeah, that's the new name.
No, I see why you say penguins because of Muppet.
Yeah, that's why I thought they put the joke in there for. I thought that was the deal.
Maybe, but it's called the pit.
Oh, well, the penguin pit.
I know what you're saying though.
The penguin pit. It's fine. Yeah, you went down and you went up. The biggest thing I remember from Puppet Theater is that in every room they showed you a piece of the red curtain so you knew where you were, whether you were behind, in front, underneath in the penguin pit. Yeah, that's what it is. I don't know. Someone look that up because I'm probably wrong, but I'm just not going to ever say I'm wrong. But yeah, Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. Yeah, like Jamie was saying, it's been a minute. You know, we've already had an iteration of Yeti in between, so they can get blurred up a little bit. But temperature control, I'm a whore for that. So I don't know, Seamus, what do you think about these? While I look up the
this
penguin
is
pit?
actually, I mean, again, for a 5 against a 12, it seems like Puppet Theater is probably the winner here, but it's hard to pick against the two because Puppet, again, you know, the sense of scale that they're able to pull off in a sprung tent and give you that feeling like you're in a much bigger space than you really are, really kind of attracts me. Like, I like when they can do that. And I think Puppet Theater did a really good job of that. Plus, the theme was really cool. The characters are really cool. How they transitioned from room to room was really well done. Like you said, when they go from, you know, outside the stage to the penguin pit,
Orchestra pit.
the pit.
It's because they wear penguin suits. Yeah, it's like tuxedos, you know? Yeah.
And I think this is also another one of those houses where, like you had said before with Descendants, I think you get more of an appreciation for it when you do like a tour and you get to see it with the lights on and understand kind of like how they do some of the things they do, learn about where they get some of the props, because like you wouldn't know that a lot of those instrumental props that they had in that scene were real like props that they got from who knows where, and like out of Europe and all over the world, and being able to pull that stuff in there, and whether or not you know that fact, it's still it draws you into the world that they're creating with the room with that house. With Yeti, I do like the idea of using the temperature control to kind of make it feel like you're in, you know, wherever the Nepal, Tibet, whatever the fuck it's called, and give you that sense of being pulled to another world or pulling to somewhere else than obviously a theme park in Central Florida. But I think for me, it's less. I mean, I think it's a cool idea, kind of like with the smells, like pumping in the smells can help draw you in. But I also look at it like, you know, they cool these stupid houses down to like 50 degrees anyways, so like every house is cold, especially on a hot, you know, night in September. So it's less exciting for me when they do that. But again, it was also the first time we got Yeti in a full house. He was, you know, a great idea. The characters in that one are really good. The Yeti costumes are pretty incredible. So if you haven't done a house with Yeti in it, I you know, you're missing out a little bit, because like you get to see some of those big costumes that you don't always see in every type of house, which I think was pretty cool too. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thought. You kind of see where I think I'm leaning towards. So I don't know if you want me to start the vote, but
you can. I think we're all sort of leaning that way.
I'm going to go puppet theater.
Okay.
I think that just overall the theming, what they were, you know, the pull off, the scale, and everything that kind of went into making that house what it was and making it such a surprise hit is why I'm going with that.
Jamie?
I'm here. Don't worry. I was looking up to try and see if Creature was in the Yeti house, but I'm not finding anything, which is pretty weird.
It's okay.
But,
it's not
I
a
think
penguin pit either. It's an orchestra pit. I looked it up.
I also looked up Penguin Pit, and the only thing that popped up for me was Pittsburgh Penguin. So I don't think that's what you're going. Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's
We're
fine.
ridiculous. Anyways, I think you guys know what I'm going with here is also going to be puppet theater.
Yes, I will third that, and I will go the Pittsburgh Penguin Puppet Theater. Yeah, we're losing our minds here. Spring break is killing me at work, and my mind is completely fucking mushed. Our next matchup, 13-seeded HHN Icons Captured, going up against the 4-seed, The Darkest Deal. Now, two that are pretty fresh on our minds, I'd still say. The Darkest Deal pretty much being the darling of last year's event. This was one of the longest, I think, the longest rumored houses. You know, we kind of caught wind of a Devil Went Down to Georgia style house very early in speculation season, and somehow that lasted all the way, came to fruition, and it ended up being just an absolute juggernaut of a house. This thing was, I mean, the story was there, the scares were there, the scents were there. They intertwined music into this. They had really cool lighting effects. They had great costuming. They introduced us to the Collector, who's this new character that hopefully we tie back in somewhere down the road, but just the design of him was awesome. This thing was just firing on all cylinders. And then we had Icons Captured, which, for better or for worse, I feel like the newer HHN crowd, this was their icon house, right? This was like the first time a lot of people have seen some of these characters, myself included. You know, I think I saw them all in passing at 25, but this was like my first, you know, kind of house that I got to continue on with all these characters. The ending was really cool. The way that there was always a different rotating cast that really made it fun. Each room was just awesome. You know, the usher room was really, really fun. The director had his own little shtick. The caretaker room, smelling of roses, was awesome. Even that intro, that big facade of walking into Fear's lantern and being greeted by a big stilt walker Fear was was really, really cool. So this thing, while it didn't have, the story of Darkest Deal, it didn't have a crazy in-depth story. The icons were captured and they're stuck in the lantern. Cool. It's a anniversary year. It's a best of. It's the greatest hits. It's everything you really could have wanted if by smashing all of these characters into one house. So I want to say this is tougher than it is, but really it's not that tough for me. Jamie, what do you think about these two?
This is a toughie because over time I have really, really grown to love Darkest Deal, and I feel like the more we ran it, it was one of the houses that I didn't get tired of. I just enjoyed every run that we did. The scare actors were always on point, but then you have HHN Icons, which was so nostalgic for someone who's been going to the event for so long and getting to see all these characters again. It was really fun. I love the whole idea of all the characters being captured in Fear's Lantern. I thought that was really, really cool. I thought the set design of this house was great. I loved how everyone had their own room. I loved all the different Easter eggs. I'm really hyping this one up, but then again, I mean, it's tough because these are two very different ones as well. And I feel like you had mentioned, Nick, I feel like The Darkest Deal has a great story to it, and it's more of an in-depth story and more to it that we might not have gotten to know just yet. But I feel like with Icons, it's more straightforward, and it's definitely suits more of the crowd who enjoys the lore of HHN and the different backstories of the characters and stuff like that. So I don't know. This one's tough. What do you think, Seamus?
Yeah, it's kind of a hard couple to put up against. It's hard to put these two up against each other because I think they both have their strengths. Darkest Deal was, again, much like Puppet Master. It was kind of like a darling of the event. I don't think there was a whole lot going into it that people were, assuming or guessing, and they, kind of went in with an open mind, and it really did do a good job of bringing you into a specific story, even if this one's kind of based more on something than others. With Icons, it was the star factor, right? I mean, it was pulling you in based on your love of all the various icons that had been brought to the event at some point or another. And it wasn't all just Jack, or wasn't all just one of the other characters. It was literally, it's a rogues gallery of all our icons, and we want to just celebrate them and celebrate the 30th anniversary of the event. And I think that's kind of what made that one special, even for someone like me who hadn't been going for very, very long. It was only my second real event. So because of that, I think that, that was a big deal too. So it's going to be hard to pick between these two, I think. I know what I'm going to go with. I'm pretty sure. But I think this might, we might actually, who knows? This one could surprise, I think.
All right. Jamie, then where are you leading with this one? Why don't you pick?
So this one was kind of a no-brainer for me, but I'm going to have to choose HHN Icons. Mm-hmm. I don't know, just something about it, man. It was just so fun, and I just loved the ending when it was always a different, even though we got a lot of the same icons. Okay. Sometimes it was always fun with the little switch up that we had at the end too.
All right. Well, then I'll put the pressure on, because I'm going to go Darkest Deal. Mm-hmm. I love this house. I really do, and the fact that it's a house from last year and I'm already like itching to do it like right now is a testament to how much I really love this house. I think this is an all-timer. I think this is going to go down on the list of like in the top 5 houses of all time for me so far. I don't know, man. There was just something special about that house. And I just can't shake it. So Seamus, it's all tied up. Are we letting the 13 seed get the upset here, or what's going on?
I know that I'm the champion of the originals. I always go to bat for the original houses. So The Darkest Deal being like a truly original house. I guess that I say that, but then if you think about it, it's based on, previous folklore and previous tales that aren't necessarily original. But either way, it was kind of their own take on it, and they did a really good job. But there is always a but. I will say that even for someone who hasn't been going to the event nearly as long as others have been, there was just something about the HHN Icons house that was really special. And for me, I think it was getting to experience a lot of those characters in their natural elements, much like the Scary House, I believe, of that same year.
Yeah.
You really got a chance to experience all of those various characters and see what, each of them kind of got to live in their own moment. Plus the last scene where you get to see them all have a moment on stage and in the chair and interact with the with the park goers. And if you had the opportunity and the luck to go through it more than once, you would usually get somebody different each time. So I think it's close. It's really close, but I'm going to go with HHN Icons Captured.
Whoa.
And that's
Upset
gonna go
alert.
through.
The Cinderella story has begun.
I forgot I
We
was
have a
muted.
13 seed that got through there.
Mm.
Wow. All right. Okay. All right.
I'm surprised. I'm truly surprised, Seamus, honestly. But I'm glad you
Yeah.
enjoyed it. See, that makes me happy, though. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much.
This is yeah. Okay. Wow. Alrighty. Well, next matchup. I'll let Seamus talk about these two because I know this is one of his favorites. So this is a number 3 seeded Graveyard Games going up against the 14 seed Fiesta de Chupacabras.
Yeah, this is another pretty good matchup. Much like you in the first vote, though, I think we can kind of guess where I'm going to go with this one without going into too much detail. But so Graveyard Games was 2019,
Yep.
my first year there, my first real experience of what Horror Nights was and what it was able to kind of do. So I had no idea going in what it was going to be like. And we did Graveyard Games once, and I think just immediately fell in love with it. Everything about that house was right up my alley. It was classic Halloween. It was an interesting take on an original idea. I'm a sucker for, graveyards and haunted, cemeteries and things like that. And it had scary kids in it, or what looked like scary children, which are always a good way to get me. But yeah, Graveyard Games was phenomenal. Still probably top 3 for me. Not my favorite of all time after last year, but definitely top 3. And Chupacabras, which I think might be a little low on the seed here for this one. Just in my humble opinion, I think that it's a little bit better than 14. But Chupacabras, another original, another solid idea based on existing folklore, kind of like The Darkest Deal, and it was a really well put together house. The puppetry in it was really good. The characters were really good, and again, the theming and some of the tricks that they did and some of the other like little effects that they had really made that house pop for that year. But again, I'll wait to get to the vote. But I think everybody kind of knows where I'm going with this one. So yeah.
Yeah. Fiesta pulled off some tricks, man. This thing was like, I remember walking in and seeing like that cityscape, and you see the cities and you can hear the firecrackers, and that little trick they pulled off, like, don't think that went unnoticed, because when they had the little firecracker in the room, they had the sound effect, and then they had the smoke coming out from the firecrackers that were hanging in that room. Really cool way to use culture as scares, right? Because like the fireworks and firecrackers during like a celebration in Mexico is not an uncommon practice. So to find that little nuance of a celebration and find a way to scare you with it is very, very inventive. I thought the characters in Fiesta were really cool, all the different masks and stuff like that. Graveyard Games, though, I think is just in a league of its own. It really is. It was just such a classic, that's why there's staples of horror. Graveyards are one of them. But the way to tie that into the whole intro scene where they had like the texts going around and kind of gave you that the story before you got into the house was just bar none. So much like Seamus, I have a lot of love for both of these, but I think I know which way I'm going. I think you probably all do as well. But Jamie, what are your thoughts on these two?
I feel like you guys pretty much did the gist of it, because this wasn't very tough for me either, because I think I know which way I'm going with this one as well. But I just wanted to mention that I distinctly remember running this house for the first time with Nick and Seamus, because this is where I discovered Seamus's fear for the young children, because I remember as soon as because I think they were we walked through the black hallway before we got into the playground area where the kids were playing or whatever, and I feel it was kids whispering or singing or something creepy, and Seamus was like, oh, fucking hate kids, oh god. and that's something we have in common, scary children, and then any sort of hooded cloaked figures will really get me and Seamus going.
Yeah, so I might as well go around the horn, but my vote's going towards Graveyard Games.
You can count that too.
Mine too.
All right, well, that's a victory. Graveyard Games right there. No Cinderella story for Chuppies.
I did like Chupacabra though too. It was very executed very creatively, which I liked.
Whew. All right, another interesting matchup. I'll let Jamie kind of dive into these, but we have the 11-seeded Case Files Unearthed going against the 6-seeded Blood Moon Dark Offerings.
Oh man, what a toughie. Well, I'll start with Blood Moon first, since that was our more recent of a house. As you all know, we are big fans of Blood Moon around here. What I still can't fathom how this house was done. Their creative team and the gentleman, I forgot what his name was, that we learned about in the tour, that implemented so much detail to make it look like such a legitimate colonial style village that's literally being taken over by a cultist of the Blood Moon. It was just so well done. The coloring, the lighting that they did, the Blood Moon in the background, when you would move through different rooms in the house, if you would look behind you, the moon was rising or the moon was getting lower. And I just love how they play that trick and kind of do it, because it's little things like that you wouldn't really notice, but they just put so much effort into it. The tools and the costuming that they used literally old colonial style tools to do a lot of the stuff in the house, and they hung up the different tools, and just the candle wax room was phenomenal, with the ritual woman hanging with all the candles and the wax melting around her. And it was again, what would you call it, not the chapel scene, when they're in the church kind of thing in the pews, what do you call that?
Well, like mass,
like a
cult meeting.
the occult meeting in the mass in the pews, when you're in there with all the hooded cloaked figures and the big writing on the wall with the Blood Moon. It was just, there were so many different aspects in this house that were so intriguing, I feel like is a good word to put it. There was always something new I feel like you would see. And I know that a lot of the different characters that they had in the house were not really your typical monsters, ghoulies, creeps, creatures, stuff like that. It was just regular people dressed up in old colonial style outfitting for the most. And I feel like the more and more we did this house and did the runs for it, I feel like the more we would see them really getting into the role, which is nice to see over the whole season, how the house started out, how the house ended up. It was always great, but it's just fun to see how it develops over time. And then with Case Files, we talked about this on a recent episode, how I really enjoyed this house as well, because I love the whole Casablanca comic book noir style detective-esque, and I love a compilation house. I love how this house, literally room by room that you went to, it was a different story. You had the kitty cat club, you had the alien monsters from Nostromo, that kind of vibe. It was so many different things, and I really enjoy the black and white aspect that they had in some of it, because it really made you feel more a part of that story, and it was easy to follow along in what was going on. And it kind of left us wanting more, because our boy Boris, we know of him, but I feel like we still don't know enough of him, and I feel like it kind of left us hanging for something more hopefully to come. But both of these houses, very different, very well done, as all of the originals mostly are, but these are two very good contenders to go against each other.
Yeah, these are very interesting. This is again kind of a Descendants versus Yeti Campground Kills matchup. They're very different, but still being HHN originals, they can only differ so much. Case Files, man, just seemed to get like that throw in house that was like kind of the last minute, not last minute, but they had the whole year to touch it up, but it was just such an outside contender. It was, people didn't really think much of it. And I know myself, when I was like, Case Files Unearthed, all right, like I kind of have done my research now at this point, like I'm interested, let's see what this is all about. and it blew me away. I don't think it caught on as much as it should have because the wait times, I feel like, never really breached 30 minutes unless it was prime time. But this was always like our last house. You know, it was over at Shrek Theater. This was a 5-minute walk through. We'd walk in, walk out, and that would be our night. But Blood Moon, man, I mean, that thing, again, you want to talk about an all-timer, this is up there. The set design for this is just, it's pretty much held in comparison with Dead Man's Pier, and rightfully so, as that very beautifully horrific style. You had that big creaturey contraption that they were piecing together at the end scene with the cloaks. They made adjustments throughout the season, which helped it, because I think our biggest knock on this in the beginning was they're all doing the same thing. Every sound is that whoosh or the and it was just it was too samey, and they pivoted, which was great, and they added some great little line. The false-hearted must die, and just they've made the necessary adjustments to make this house kind of what it is today. But that's kind of my thoughts on that. So Seamus, I know this is, again, kind of one of your all-timers, maybe your number one all-timer.
As of right now, it's if it's not, it's close. It's kind of tight between Blood Moon and probably Dead Man's. But yeah, it's close. It's definitely close. And I don't really have much to add to it other than what you guys have said. I mean, like Jamie said, you know, without going into without reiterating what she said too much, but like just how it took you to an old colonial style, felt like 1600s New England, or, you know, areas like that, places that we grew up in, or I should say Nick and I grew up in, and I'm sure, you know, to a certain point here, but it just brought you back to that feeling. It felt like a cold fall breezy night with the leaves blowing around, and just, I don't know, it felt like home, and it felt like nostalgia. And yeah, there's just nothing more I can really say about that house. And I love Case Files too. Again, another big one that didn't really hold much, you know, from me. I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of preconceived ideas going into it because I had never heard of Case Files before. I didn't realize it was like a long-standing thing that had been going on at the event for a while. But yeah, so it's going to be... Now, I don't want to say it's going to be a close vote for me, but Case Files definitely is deserving either way.
Yeah. All right. So let's cast our votes on this one. I'm going to go Blood Moon. The 6th seed, again, with the seeding, I kind of did scrap together this pretty quick. So 6 is pretty low for Blood Moon. So this thing might make a little run. And I also want Blood Moon to win so that there's an explosion in Seamus's brain in the next round. So I'm going to go Blood Moon. Jamie?
I'm also going with Blood Moon.
This is also a clean sweep. Blood Moon.
All right.
That it is.
Well, just wait for the next round because Seamus's head is going to explode. All right. Next matchup. We'll let Seamus go over this one. This is
it came up to me, right?
The Monster Mash.
Oh my God.
This is the 7-seeded Universal Monsters Unmasked going up against the 10th-seeded Universal Monsters Legends Collide. So there will only be one. There can only be one.
So Universal Monsters Unmasked is the 2019 Monsters?
This is the last year's.
Oh, so this is the one with
Phantom, Hunchback.
And Hunchback. Okay, because I make sure I got them right. All right, so this is last year's, and then Legends Collide is
the previous Mummy,
Vampire, or Mummy Dracula, and
Wolfie, Hairman.
Wolfie. Yeah. Without going into incredible detail, because everybody kind of knows what Universal Monsters are, what they look like, who they are. Obviously, Unmasked had some different characters. And I'm sorry about all the background noise, everybody. Everybody in my house is still awake at 9:13 at night.
Well, we had to do this early because we got to go to the Matrix, so that one's on us a little bit.
Bear with me for 1 second.
Yeah, so I'll go into these houses a little bit, but Universal Monsters Unmasked, obviously coming from last year, that facade was just incredible. You had the rain coming down, you had the little London, whatever that guy's name was, the cop, I don't even know what he was saying, but he was saying stuff. But the fact that this was like that, it sounds bad calling them B and C grade monsters, but they really are. They're not the headliners, so to speak. The story, it really wasn't as much of a story as it was kind of just mashing these two together. Now, I would say the downfall of this house, and as much as I did love this house, the downfall was me not getting all the phantom scenes that I wanted. The phantom scenes were very repetitive. It was, box seat, box seat, box seat, red curtain, red curtain, red curtain. And then where it really shined was that whole hunchback stuff, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde stuff. Phantom's character was really good, but that little I don't want to say intro because the sewers are really cool, the catacombs are cool, but that Phantom opera entrance was sort of the downfall of it for me. Legends Collide had some really cool sets. However, what fell behind, I think, for all of us is the story was so in depth and convoluted, and they tried to originally do like a 2-part story between here and in Hollywood, and that whole idea I think just ended up getting scrapped at some point because there really wasn't, from what I remember, a direct continuation, which is what they really anticipated. But the story being the whole Dracula is this secret benefactor guy that's paying for the Wolfman to go grab the mummy's amulet, it got a little lost in translation. It was not something you would pick up just by walking through the house. The Legends Collide kind of started, I don't want to say a trend because it just happened the 2 years in a row, but Legends Collide had that really colossal W of that triple scare, right? Where they kind of came at all access points of view, and they tried to recreate that in Unmasked, and I think they were just a little too spaced out, so it didn't have that same effect. But I don't know, Jamie, what do you think about these two?
I love the monsters. I love them all dearly. Some hold a more special place in my heart, which kind of were some in one of these particular houses. So I feel like my mind was kind of made up for this one already. Although both are great iterations of monsters, and both were very different in the set of their set design, and it was so immersive and immaculate in structure and just how much detail they put into both of them. But I feel like you'd mentioned I feel like it seemed like we were missing a lot with Phantom, with the different box seating scenes and stuff like that. I feel like it was just a lot of empty space, which was unfortunate. And then I feel like in Legends Collide that it was a little repetitive with the monsters, even though, like you said, it was a lot of B grade and C grade monsters in Unmasked. I feel like we had a more variety, which was nice, versus seeing Mummy over and over, Dracula here and there a couple times, then the Wolfman. So it's hard to, it's not hard, I don't want to say it's hard to compare these two because they are similar in the sense they're both Monsters House, but both very different vibes going on with these.
Yeah. Seamus, where did these land for you on these two? This is
so you guys
land, but
explained it for me, but I think this is easier for me to vote on than probably you two, because we all know I have fond memories of Legends Collide. For me it's easy. It's Monsters Unmasked. I think that house was incredibly well done, and it was my favorite Monsters house by far. And it was in my top half of last year, which I'm sure surprised a lot of people, but I just felt like it was really well done. And they took those B characters and actually did a really, really good job with them. So yeah, we're going to go for the 7th seed.
All right. And I honestly completely forgot Invisible Man was in Unmasked. I just talked about the whole house and didn't mention him once. Forgot he was even there.
That's how forgetful he was.
I was going to say it's because you couldn't see him. I mean, what do you expect?
Jamie, what's your vote on this one?
Excuse me, I'm so excited. It's going to be Unmasked.
Unmasked. That was my vote as well.
Really?
I was going Unmasked. Yeah,
I'm surprised.
I thought there would at least be some division here. I didn't think there was going to be a straight sweep.
No, I liked Unmasked better. I just, that entrance alone was just so crazy. I do like the Mummy. I do like Wolfman, but I just do not like Dracula. I don't like that he was shoehorned in there. So for me, that really hurt it. And I like those other characters way more. I like Hunchback. I like Phantom. That those speak to me more than those other ones. So let's get to our last matchup in the first round, and that will be our 15-seeded Nightingale's Blood Pit going against the 2-seed, the Wicked Growth. Who wants to tackle this one?
I think you should do this one. Well, yeah, you could do this one if you want, or if Seamus wants to. I feel like Nightingales I don't remember enough.
So this one's going to be, I would imagine this is going to be a pretty clean sweep, but we might see an incredible upset. I don't know. The Wicked Growth is obviously, again, one of my favorites of all time. Just saying. If you happen to be watching the YouTube stream,
you're checking out our
you know
YouTube.
what I'm talking about. But going against Nightingale's Blood Pit was the only Nightingale's house I'd ever been through. I don't know. This is a continuation of something else, from the past. But it was 2019, another one from 29 that took place in. I think it's like it was like I don't know if it was ancient Egypt or ancient something. It was like an ancient civilization, and then the scare actors were what looked like bird skulls or something along those lines. I don't quite remember the whole story of it, but essentially it was like I think kind of like a Colosseum, blood pit.
It was the Roman, like that ancient Roman
era,
time
like, type of thing, and it was kind of all based in that. But I think not really remembering what it was entirely about speaks to how forgetful it was. I know that it has its fans, but honestly, out of the list that we have here, this is the one that I think I liked the least. So I don't remember a whole lot about it. Wicked Growth is Wicked Growth. It's incredible. Pumpkin Lord is incredible. You can definitely feel, or you felt the inspiration from Scarecrow all throughout it, and it totally just had that same vibe. And I think that helped it along. So yeah, I don't know how much more you guys want to go into it. I think this is a pretty easy win for one of them.
Yeah, I do like Nightingales. It was definitely like the gore house. There was a lot of blood in that thing. I mean, it's in the name, but when you're going against something like Wicked Growth, I mean, that thing just had scares on scares. They had really cool tricks that they pulled off. Not only did they introduce us to Pumpkin Lord, but the way they were able to capture that essence of Halloween just really did it for me. So yeah, I mean, I know which way I'm going. Jamie, do you have any other different thoughts at all, or you kind of remember Blood Pit is the same?
I do kind of remember Blood Pit is the same. Because I remembered it was like the outside was kind of like how would you explain? Not Roman gods, kind of like that Trojan battle, I guess maybe.
It had people on like spikes and stuff.
I don't think it was any particular civilization, but it had that Roman, Greek, Trojan, that feel.
Really, usually not my thing. So, and Wicked Growth, I feel like it's just the essence of Halloween. It really is. Just what a cool house that was with everything in it. I just can't even. I wish I could do it again and again. That was honestly a really good house. That is one of those houses that I look back on and I'm like, dang. Kind of same thing with Puppet Theater as well. It's like I would love to run that house again, and just for that first time feeling.
Right. But I mean, I'll just toss my vote in now. I'm going Wicked Growth. That's just where that one's not going to change, I don't think, for me.
Yeah. Yep. Wicked Growth.
Me 3,
Wicked Growth
buddies.
Advances. Alrighty, so we're on to the second round. I know that one took a little while, but that was a lot of stuff. And obviously now we've hit on those houses. So we don't really need to go in depth on these houses at all at this point. So now we're pretty much just going to be talking very quickly on the comparisons between the two houses that we got and who's going to be leading up. So going all the way back to the top of the bracket, we have the number 1 Dead Man's Pier going up against the number 9 seed Descendants of Destruction. Who wants to give a quick little 15-second pitch of where you're at on these two houses to kick us off, and we'll kind of go from there?
Sure. Dead Man's Pier is phenomenal. It's probably one of the best houses they've ever done. Again, that same New England nostalgia feel for someone like me from that area. It just feels like a small seaside town on Cape Cod. And Descendants of Destruction, same idea. Incredible sense of scale. What they were able to do with that house was, again, pretty incredible. But for me, it doesn't sniff Dead Man's Pier. So my vote's for Dead Man's.
Dead Man's, yeah. I have similar mindset. Descendants, like we said, is that darling. It kind of grew on me. But Dead Man's, it's just they played with every sensory available. They catered it right to me, and this thing just couldn't have been made more for me. Obviously, I think Descendants was probably a little scarier, and Dead Man's, the sets were amazingly beautiful. So that's a huge plus. But the fact that they got those sets and stuff of Descendants in the Sprung tent is a whole different thing. But Jamie, I'll let you give your thoughts and where you would vote, but I'm voting Dead Man, so it is advancing.
Like you said, two just immersively beautiful houses that were just done so differently. And for a house like Descendants, for me, someone who doesn't really like the post-apocalyptic kind of vibe, like you were saying, kind of like The Last of Us, all this kind of stuff, I actually really enjoyed this house and not the take that they took on it for their own original flair to it. And Dead Man's was just so hauntingly beautiful, I feel like is such a good way to put it. I've always I know it doesn't really have the theme, but I feel like the lighting and the ambiance would just be the same as if they were to ever have a Bly Manor house. Just saying. I mean, that would be fantastic, but I'm gonna have to go with Dead Man's for this one too.
All right, well, Dead Man's moves along. Next matchup. This is an interesting one. We have our number 5 seeded Puppet Theater going against our 13 seeded HHN Icons Captured. I'm interested where y'all land because you were the two that put Icons Captured into the second round. But I mean, Puppet Theater, I'll just give my little pitch here. Again, the fact that this thing was in a sprung tent is just mind blowing. I get that Icons Captured gets that little boost because it's the Icons. It's familiar. It's a new. You get to see them again, so it's just like meeting up with your old buddies at the bar. But Puppet Theater is just something so different. Puppet Theater is one of those houses that's going to stick with me forever. I remember when this first thing came out, back when me and Seamus started Fear and Beer, we did our first speculation map ever, and this thing was on there as Mannequin Theater. And me and Seamus looked to each other and we're like, this is it. I don't know anything other than the name Mannequin Theater. And we were terrified. And I was like, this is gonna be a banger. And they took it and they ran with it. So, I mean, for me, I'm putting Puppet Theater in the 5 seed over the 13 seed, but whoever wants to jump in, feel free.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, Icons Captured, fun house. I think that it did what it set out to do, but just on a technical level, Puppet Theater was so much more, it was just so much more than what Icons was. So as much as I'd love to see Icons carry forward, but I think it's got to be Puppet Theater.
Jamie?
Yeah, like you said too, this is just a house I will always remember and always want to do again. And it's just tough because Dead Silence was probably one of my favorite houses that they've ever had at the event. And I feel like this just gave me such strong nostalgia of that house. And it was so beautifully done. It was just, it was magical. So I'm going with Puppet Theater, obviously.
Puppet Theater has made it to the quarterfinals. All righty. Next up, this is the matchup that is going to split Seamus in two. The number 3 seeded Graveyard Games going against the 6 seeded Blood Moon. So I'm going to let Seamus do the honors on this one because this one I still haven't really made up my mind yet.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know what else I can really add to it. For me, it's just going to come down to Graveyard Games being, maybe my first real experience to what Horror Nights is, and Blood Moon being the latest in the line of incredible original houses that they found a way to try new things, do new things, really put you in a place and a time, and kind of take you out of the idea that you're just at a theme park. So this is a hard one for me, but I'll just be quick and give you my vote. It's actually going to be Blood Moon.
Wow, the 6 seed going over. Okay. Seamus, not Seamus. Jamie, why don't you give your thoughts? So Blood Moon, the 6 seed, 3 seed Graveyard Games. Where's your mind at?
Two different vibes completely with this house that I both enjoyed so much. The story of Sid and Nancy that we had in Graveyard Games, and just the whole blue and black hues in the house and the lighting and just everything they did with the creepy little kids that Seamus hates so much. And then just the whole vibe of the house I really did enjoy, and I'm surprised we haven't gotten a second iteration of it yet, because I feel like there's more of a story to be told. And then you have, what was our other house? I'm so sorry.
Blood Moon.
Blood Moon. How could I forget? And then you have Blood Moon, Parish Town. I'd love to go back to Parish Town, but I'm not going to go too much into detail on this one. Do you have your mind made up, Nick?
I can pick right now.
You could pick right now.
I can pick my pick right now.
I'm picking Blood Moon.
Oh,
I'm picking Blood Moon. I can't. There is just something about that house. I just never got tired of doing it. It's just so well done.
It's just simply too good.
It's just simply too. Gotta make money off this somehow.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I was going Graveyard Games all the way, so I was gonna pick first and put the pressure on you, but it looks like I've been outvoted. Graveyard Games not making the quarterfinals, the semifinals.
I do know you
Whatever
enjoy
this is.
Graveyard Games, though.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm back. We went through
Wow.
Blood Moon.
Blood Moon.
Blood Moon.
Blood
Nick
Moon.
picked Graveyard Games.
Feel like Blood Moon is one of those teams that, gets in at a lower seed than they really should be. I think the 6th seed is kind of a phantom seed for them. They probably should have been a little bit higher, but doesn't surprise me.
All right. Blood Moon's in. All right. Our last matchup in the second round, Universal Monsters Unmasked, going against the number 2 seed, The Wicked Growth. Now, I think this one's a little bit further apart than the other matchups might have been, but again, Wicked Growth, we sang its praises. I don't have to do it anymore. That's just classic Halloween, and that's what Horror Nights is about. Universal Monsters Unmasked, I think, is my favorite Monsters house of all time. I do enjoy them, but again, Wicked Growth was just so cohesive and just perfect. So I'm going the Wicked Growth. I'm pushing this thing through. So
yeah, I'm gonna go the same way. I agree wholeheartedly. The Wicked Growth is what it is. It's much like Dead Man's. It's in the pantheon, and Monsters Unmasked, as good as it was, my favorite Monsters house, it still just doesn't have that same magic that these houses do. So, wow. Wicked Growth.
All right, well, Jamie, thoughts?
I guess Wicked Growth already took the cake, huh? 2v1. I was gonna pick Unmasked.
Well, explain why.
Definitely the best out of all the monster houses we've got, and I don't care what you say, Nick. The B grade monsters and the C grade monsters add that pizzazz. They add that flair.
I like them better. I don't know why you're coming at me for that. I like the B grade ones better.
You called them because you called them B and C characters. And
compared to Dracula and Mummy and Frankenstein, they are.
You didn't even remember the Invisible Man was in the house.
He didn't like the Invisible Man, if you remember correctly.
Because Invisible Man should not have been in that house.
He probably shouldn't have been, but either way, it didn't detract from the house.
They added to it. It's just, you just can't beat it how it was. It had a story to follow. It had the facade to match it. It had the plethora of different characters, so you weren't seeing the same scare actor over and over again. It had great dialogue for the different characters that we had throughout the house. Yeah, I mean, I don't even.
I agree with everything you just said.
You're not wrong.
I just don't think it has enough to top something like the Wicked Growth.
That's fair.
No. And just because I said they're B grade, they're lesser known than the others.
They are.
But I like them more. Yeah.
Even regardless of whether you like the true original monsters or those monsters, it comes down to a lot of it just being something new. It's not, hey, here's Dracula again. Hey, here's Wolfman again. Here's Mummy again. You've seen him a million times, but you go. That feels like pandering. I'd rather them do different things with new characters.
Yeah. So we're down to our final 4. And coincidentally enough, we have a 1 seed, a 5 seed, a 6 seed, and a 2 seed. The ones that are missing are 3-seeded Graveyard Games, didn't make the cut. And our 4-seeded The Darkest Deal didn't even make it out of the first round.
That's crazy.
Crazy that you let icons get in there. So let's get into our first matchup. This is interesting. We have our 1-seeded Dead Man's Pier going up against our 5-seated Puppet Theater. This is like Seamus had his worst nightmare. This might be my worst nightmare because these are some of my favorite houses. I really am still unsure where I'm going to go. Dead Man's, I think, obviously there's a lot of favoritism in there for me. This is New England. It's fishing town. It's my bread and butter. But Puppet Theater just did something so different and unique, and it told a story. These are both pretty beautiful houses. The Dead Man's Pier, I mean, we didn't even hit upon the widow and the violin scene. That was just ridiculous that was made happen. We had the whole lighthouse that you could see spinning the whole time in the house, but Puppet Theater, man, that was just a different beast. So, man, who wants to put their vote in? Because I'm still
That's pretty
debating.
amazing. If you go the way you're making it sound, yeah. Go ahead, Jamie.
If it makes it more difficult or easier for you guys, I'm not quite sure, but I'm going with Puppet Theater.
You definitely just made it that much harder. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, both were incredible houses, incredible ideas. They both took you to a different time and place without really trying very hard. Both had a really incredible sense of scale. That ship scene with the spirit of the wife playing the violin, and the wind and the cold temperature and the wet and the rain, it felt like you were there. And then of course Puppet Theater took, we had already said, the scale that they managed to do in a sprung tent is incredible. So I have to go just with my heart, and it's Dead Man's, unfortunately, for those that want Puppet Theater. I love Puppet Theater, and I think that what they did in the sprung tent it could be enough to push it over, but I just have to go with what I truly think is one of the best houses they've ever done, and that's Dead Man's Pier.
Yeah, this is tough because, wow, okay.
The onus is now on you.
Yeah, yep. Just Puppet where I wanted to be.
Puppet Theater was scarier, I feel like, is what did it for me.
It was.
I would agree. Yep.
If someone had to put it up to me, they were like, okay, Dead Man's Pier and Puppet Theater right next to each other. You could only do one of the houses, one more run, and it's gone forever. That's it, never to come again. I would pick Puppet Theater. But that's just me. If I had the chance to rerun one of these houses again,
comes down to personal preference, really, is what all this is going to be. But for this one, it's definitely personal preference, because to me, it's not just about how scary a house is. I think being scary is one element to it. But there has to be a cohesive story. There has to be great set pieces. It has to come be the whole package. And I just think that Dead Man's is a more complete package than Puppet is, even though Puppet's really close. It's like right there. So,
man, I know everybody listening is like, well, Nick, we know which one you're going to pick. Stop trying to draw it out. But I really don't know yet. The scene, like we talked about, the widow playing, I remember I did Dead Man's one night right at closing, and there was nobody behind me, and I just stood in that room and watched her play the violin for like a solid 2.5 minutes.
We got a movie in 45 minutes, so let's go. Hurry up and make a decision.
I'm putting Dead Man's in. Dead Man's will get the nod from me. That's just, yeah.
It's a hard decision to make, because I could totally see why Puppet Theater would have swept, and
yeah,
it's just it's one of those tough matchups.
It's all right.
Yeah. All right. Our next matchup, the 6th-seeded Blood Moon going against the 2nd-seeded The Wicked Growth. Interesting. They both have like little pumpkin stuff in there too.
Tough.
This is another one that's just
another
tough.
mashup for Seamus.
And it's going to come down to just personally in my heart, what do I feel? And I love Wicked Growth, and I'm trying to not let what they did to Pumpkin Lord the following season ruin that house for me. Because I think it's a lot more than just him, but obviously he was the set piece. He was the central,
they were growing him. That was the point.
That's the whole point. He was at the end. That was his big moment. I love Wicked Growth. I really, really love Wicked Growth. But I'm telling you, man, this is something about Blood Moon. Something that was just so incredibly special with that house. Jamie said it in the beginning. The way they brought you to that village, that central area where you were. It wasn't just, hey, here's a bunch of different. It wasn't just a maze. It felt like you were walking through a village, and it just did something. And again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. The fact that the waits for that house was never bad. And you literally didn't wait more than maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes for that house consistently, even on the busiest nights, was absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
That house deserved an hour and a half wait on a Saturday night. Every Saturday night that event went on, and the fact that it wasn't was good for me because I got to go through it a lot.
Right.
But I just think that house is, I mean, again, it's just some of the best work they've ever done. And I don't know if that's just because of the nostalgia there, but because of that, I have to go Blood Moon.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm speaking up quickly because I'm not going to let Blood Moon take out Graveyard Games and the Wicked Growth. I cannot stand for this. Wicked Growth is getting my vote 100%. I love Blood Moon, but the Wicked Growth was just so fucking good, man. It was scary.
It was.
They had all kinds of different scares in here. They had the little oh god, it's not cables, but it's like the little I forget what it's called, but the slack scares.
Yeah,
that it looked like the windows, and they had the guy come from the darkness,
like the
into
stretchy
oh
fence.
my
and
god,
stuff.
it was amazing. The witches brewing him. You had the little baby in the cage because there was little throwbacks there. Oh man, the Wicked Growth.
Nothing you have said is untrue.
I know that little kitchen scene just from the get go when you walk into the like rundown kitchen area. I can't. Wicked Growth, 100% in for me. This one's on Jamie now.
Yeah,
Jamie has to make a decision.
Well, you're gonna.
I had to put Dead Man's in. She has to put one of these in.
You're gonna be real disappointed when I pick Blood Moon.
Come on. Jesus.
How can I not? This is probably Blood Moon is probably in my like top 5 like all time favorite houses. For sure.
This is the hell final. Just saying.
For sure. You could always do something like, even though Wicked Growth was so creative and it was so well done in just that classic essence of Halloween, you can get that, I feel like, with a lot of houses. And I'm not saying that in a bad way to deter on it at all, but I feel like the theme and the setting of Blood Moon was just something so different that we just desperately needed, or I desperately needed in my life. Whoever knew I needed Parish Town, but I really did. And I just
Who knew we needed Pumpkin Lord?
And they just did him dirty. And now I just see him as like so goofy now, which is disappointing because they had the potential to just make him so scary like he was in that house. And I feel like they just
But
did
in the
him
house
so
he wasn't goofy.
No, in the house he was not goofy. Now he just reminds me of like fucking Doofy from Scream.
Fat Pumpkin Lord.
Come on. All right. We are into our finals.
Massive final.
We have the 1-seeded Dead Man's Pier going against the 6-seeded Blood Moon, who has scraped by and eliminated my 2 favorite contenders. Blood Moon has been on a war path through this whole thing, taking out Case Files, Graveyard Games, and the Wicked Growth.
The seed it was given, that's why.
Right? They're just firing on all cylinders.
Like 60. What is this shit?
This thing came into the bracket with a vengeance. So, Dead Man's Pier and Blood Moon.
This is an incredibly hard one. This might be the hardest matchup out of all of them, which is obviously because it's the final. But
very similar feels. Like we learned, in the Unmasking the Horror Tours, that these were designed by the same person or same individuals. They're just so timely. They were so perfectly put together. Blood Moon, all of the tools were time accurate to the set pieces, were time accurate to whatever it was supposed to take place in. Dead Man's just, it knocked nautical theming out of the park. I wish that one little scene where they're supposed to have that boat in the water, I really wish they could have pulled that off, but they nearly flooded the entire soundstage when they tried to do that. But yeah, I don't know. This one, for me, this one is a easier matchup than the previous 2, though. I'm going Dead Man's all the way. This one, and this is not just a vengeance against Blood Moon for taking out my picks, but this one I think for me is a little bit easier than even the Puppet Theater matchup. For me, Puppet Theater was just so weirdly different. You wouldn't have, Blood Moon you would peg as a house. Like, oh, it's a culty thing. Like you could see that happening. But if I was to pitch you on a like abandoned haunted theater group, like that's a harder ask to turn into a horror house. So for me, yeah, it's complete favoritism and a little bit of pettiness, but Dead Man's Pier.
I don't know, Jamie. You want to be the tiebreaker? You want me to be the tiebreaker?
Oh, jeez.
I mean, me and Nick, we get the pettiness. We're both only children. We're brats. We're stubborn. We're always gonna pick what we want to go with. So I'm gonna go with my favorite. I mean, I'm gonna pick Blood Moon. So
All right, so we're down to me, and this one hurts. This is really hard because, again, I've said it all night. Like, they both reach they reach inside and they touch that part of me that brings me back to where I come from. It brings me back to a era of childhood where I can kind of it's like walking into like a bakery smelling cookies and remembering grandma's house. It's kind of like that feeling. So it's really hard to like nail down which one, and even now it's hard for me to really nail which of these two is my favorite house of all time, because Blood Moon is definitely up there, but Dead Man's, I don't know. This is really hard. And the other thing too with Dead Man's is they were able to take a pretty standard scare zone and create the house that they did out of it. Like, that to me is, again, a feat in itself.
That's a really good point.
Yes,
especially
it is. You're right.
especially with an original idea, unlike something like Clowns with Killer Clowns, which was like an existing property. I think to take and they haven't really done it a whole lot to begin with. I mean, as far as I can tell, they've done it before in the past, and who knows, they may be doing it again this year. But to take a scare zone and flesh it out and make it what it was as a house really speaks to the theming that Dead Man's had. So I'm sorry, Jamie, it's with a heavy heart. Even though I've been talking up Blood Moon the whole time, I have to edge Dead Man's Pier. I know it's boring. It's the number one seed. I know it's all the number one seed wins.
Crazy.
I really feel like this should be like a 1-2 matchup, not a 1-6. I'm fighting the power with this whole Blood Moon being ranked 6th, but either way, I think it's just truly a 1-2 matchup, potentially a 1A 1B matchup. And I don't know. I gotta give it to Dead Man's Pier.
All right. Dead Man's can have it. Y'all can have it.
Ran train on this bracket.
Mm-hmm. No, I kind of had a feeling that would take the cake, which is
and
fine.
I wonder how much. I would like to know, kind of like from everybody, what your thoughts are. Let us know what did we get wrong, because I know we probably got a lot of things wrong, but
right.
How would you have done it differently? And just let us, just give us that information. Let us know. Connect with us and let us know. With that, I think since we get a movie quick, we don't have time to kind of go through our watches of the week
or movie of the week. No.
So yeah, movie of the week. I will quickly say I did watch X and Pearl, and I thought they were both incredible movies.
Yes.
I prefer Pearl over X. So again, you can yell at me and tell me that I'm wrong if you want to. With that, Jamie, you have anything final you want to kind of go bring out to everybody, or are we good to go?
This little bracket thing was really fun, honestly. For someone who doesn't get into all the March Madness stuff, I really enjoyed doing this. And Dead Man's, I gotta say, I'll give it to it. I knew it was going to take the cake, which is fine because it is such a beautiful house and it was so well done. And Seamus, I didn't even think of how you said that. I completely forgot it was the scare zone before it was a house. And for them just to execute it that well was just phenomenal. So I'll give it the praise where it's due. But other than that, yeah, we got Shutter Sunday coming up. I think we might be a week behind because we're waiting for a specific movie to come out. I think it's hitting theaters on Friday. So if Nick and I have a chance to see it, maybe we'll be doing that this weekend. So we will see.
All right.
My headphones can't come out, so I can kind of see when you're talking, but I can't really hear what you're saying. So I'm just going to let you do your wrap up. But we're all out of here. We got to go see a movie. But until next time, this is Nick.
This is Seamus.
This is Jamie.
Happy haunts.
It's cursed. It's got a death curse.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
And again, I would just just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out, Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.